Paul Thurrott has assured me for several months, many months, maybe even years at this point, that
Mhm.
once he got his device onto ARM, there would be no more technical challenges.
Oh, wow. That doesn't
That
sound like
that nope,
something I would
you
have
wrote
said.
it was a blood oath taken at midnight on the third Tuesday of February under a full
Do
moon.
you, so as far as you're concerned, everything's working normally, like
Yeah,
I sound
yeah.
normal, etc. I will tell you something magical happened this morning, Brad. It's just I want it. It's going to sound like a lie, so I want you to bear with me for a moment. But I opened the lid of a laptop today, and it just came on. I know, and it wasn't a Mac. I know, I know. It was just
If
sitting there
Paul
all night.
Thurrott disappears under mysterious circumstances, he either A was talking bad about Boeing, or Intel has sent the goons.
I I wish it was different.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right. So how is it? Obviously, sounds like you're off to a.
mostly it's good. I just look.
First off,
This
which
thing
one do you want?
arrived at.
What device?
Oh, sorry. So I got a Lenovo Yoga Slim 7X 14. I think is the title.
Mm-hmm.
Yogas are nice. Like it's a pleasant kind of bluish, dark blue, gray. I don't know, aluminum thing. 3 USB 4 ports. Beautiful OLED screen, gorgeous. Performance is nuts, like really nice.
Which Elite chip is in there?
It's the lowest end of the Elite X, which is very common right now for some reason. I'm guessing binning
Yeah, I was gonna say the
is the
yield rate.
problem. But it's great. No chance to do battery yet. Look, I just got it. I'm a week late, right? So obviously, initial setup, blah blah blah, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I manually installed. I usually batch this, but I wanted to kind of babysit it. All the default, like I think 16 or 18 apps. I have more to do there, but
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that hasn't worked at all is Google Drive, right? It integrates with the file system. You can't just take an x86 app and integrate it with an ARM64 file system. So, or File
Mm-hmm.
Explorer, or whatever. Um, that's a problem because I use Google Drive, right? But I also use OneDrive. So I'm going to try to figure that one out. But there's a whole hardware compatibility thing. Like I literally, well, on this trip, so because of this other laptop I've been using, I usually try to set up this 10 or 15 minutes before we talk.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had less time than that, but I plugged it into the little Anchor USB-C dock I always use. Everything connected great. The only exception was I have a Dell H6. It's a 4K webcam that has a USB-A connection on the computer end. And I think in the box somewhere, which is probably in Pennsylvania, there's a USB-C cable. So I couldn't get that. That's the device I've been having problems with the other computer, right? So I was like, oh, maybe it is the webcam, but I couldn't get it to work through the dock. So I just grabbed a USB to A to C adapter and plugged it in directly to the laptop, and came right up. So I have a little bit more work to do there, but I installed a couple of games last night. I'll be writing about that today, probably. Hardware, like I said, the hardware stuff I still have to, I've only plugged in a couple of things, but I consider it to be, this thing's already better for this than the normal computer I've been using, which is kind of amazing, with the one exception of the headphone,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no headphone jack. I keep hoping I'm mistaken. Like I keep looking like there's got to be one, right? Like there's got to be one. Because when I go through the microphone, I hear myself, which I hate. I'll try to figure that out. But
Yeah, there's. Hopefully, you don't need like a third-party app or something, but it's
yeah,
just monitoring. So there's some.
I just don't. I've just never had to do it. So I'll like I said, I did this 5 minutes before we started talking, which is just the height of stupidity. But anyway, I would say, I mean, look, it's less than 24 hours. Like I
Mm-hmm.
can't, but On the one hand, it's kind of boring because it's Windows, right? It's just there's nothing different, right? Not really. On the other hand, I review laptops like a lot, and the initial just day-to-day performance stuff is actually notably good. There is a fan and a fan noise. It's not noise is the wrong word. It's a little bit of a hum. But when I was installing apps, you could kind of get down next to it and hear it humming,
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, and last night I was playing the Doom, the 2016 Doom. This is called Doom, I guess. And if I was doing that on another laptop, any other the ones I have, because laptops aren't great for this, right? But it would be, like a jet airliner, like going to town with the fan noise. And I stopped the game and I listened. I didn't hear anything. I'm like, it's got to be. And I put my ear up to it wasn't making any sound. I was like, that's interesting.
So hang the mission
like early
accomplished
days.
banner and call it a day.
What's that?
Hang that mission accomplished banner. And
Oh, you mean like PC Mag did? Like 3 days later, just be like, here's our review. Just a bunch of benchmark tests. Like, guys, that's not. I don't know if you have lost track of what a review is, but yeah, no, this is going to be a multi-day, multi-week journey for me. But I mean, in the beginning, like today, I'll do things like use Git to download my books and put them in Visual Studio Code to make sure that
like
all
do
works.
work.
Do work. Yeah. Well, I mean, the very first thing I did was I downloaded the Markdown editor I use for writing. I downloaded Brave and Chrome. I downloaded Affinity Photo 2, right? Which there's a native ARM version. I think that's about it, roughly. I tried to download Google Drive, kind of knowing that wasn't going to work, right? And
did they say if that's going to work?
What's that?
Has Google indicated any?
Someone said that Leo said that it's not happening, but I don't know. I mean, Google obviously was pretty good about Chrome. Google. I was actually a little surprised they even did that. I mean, Google and Microsoft are not exactly the closest of partners, so I'll be doing more on that. We'll see what happens there, but I like it so far. I like it a lot.
Yeah, looks like a nice machine. I pulled up the post. Well, nobody can see it behind me. I guess I could.
Yeah,
I think it's.
You can't, but yeah, it's weird because depending on the light, the colors of the keys and the machine itself kind of change. Like that color, that picture there, or those pictures, the keys look really light blue, and I'm looking at it now and they look black. So I think it fools the camera. I mean, I don't know. You've seen like the HP Dragonflies have that kind of blue. I don't know if you call that like a navy blue almost. It's got that kind of color. It's nice. It's distinctive. Like I like it.
Well, sounds like the wait was worth it or not. I don't know. I mean, it's.
Well, yeah. This is I think. I don't know where this is going to fall, like compared to the MacBook yet. By the way, just random segue or sidetrack here. There's a big department store here called it doesn't matter what it's called, and they have an electronics department and they sell computers and stuff, and electronics and those kinds of things super expensive. But I wanted to go over and look at the MacBook Air, like 13-inch, because I'm sort of thinking about maybe getting the bigger tablet. And while we were over there, they had MacBook Pros, right? Which I have to say, like, I don't know that I've seen a MacBook Pro out in the world, like a new one. So they had the 16-inch and they had them there. So these things are humongous. Have you actually seen one of these things? Like, they're tanks. I mean, where the MacBook Air is like this elegant, gorgeous, super thin, silent awesomeness, the MacBook Pros are like kind of gross looking. Like they're really big and thick, it's weird. Anyway, I don't know where this is going to fall compared to the MacBook Air, honestly. Of course, not yet, but I do get this feeling like for this to work, it needs to get part way there. Like it needs to be in the ballpark, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And I feel like it's like that's going to be the answer at a minimum. Like it's definitely in the ballpark. Like I don't know if it's better, but not yet. But I mean, it's like, okay, like, if you can live with the thing that doesn't work, right? Because I think for everyone there's going to be, and I say like people in the comments have like always they list these things where you're like, yeah, you wouldn't expect this weird thing you use to work, and they usually, I guess they usually don't. I don't know, but the things I've tested so far are mostly mainstream, normal like apps, right? I mean, obviously Word and Excel and all that stuff has been native on ARM64 since, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. I use some weird apps like, the Markdown editor I use is not a normal app, you know. But Brave and Chrome and all the browsers basically now are ARM64. That's great. Visual Studio Code is native ARM. Affinity Photo 2 is native ARM. All the Photoshop stuff is. I don't know. It's pretty. If you're not like a freaking weirdo like I am, I mean, like you should be doing pretty good.
Unless
Mm-hmm.
you are Microsoft and you read the headlines from, actually they probably already knew this, about out of the EU, where the EU has come down on Apple and Microsoft, but they basically came out and said, look, what you did with Teams, that wasn't good enough. Unbundling
yeah, I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah.
So Apple and Microsoft both, like, are they, gatekeepers violating antitrust laws in the EU? Absolutely, right? The thing is, like, Microsoft tried to work with the EU. So they said, they're like, okay, we're going to take Teams out of Office, like, good. That's not good enough. Okay, we're going to lower the price of Office to accommodate the fact that we're not bundling Teams. Like, yep, that's not good enough. So it's like, I wonder in this case, I think, with Apple, they're very purposefully doing a certain strategy, whatever.
Right.
Agree, disagree, it doesn't matter. The Microsoft one, I wonder what the divide was, because clearly, these companies talk to the regulators. They're like, look, this is what we want to do, or this is what we're doing. And they must have indicated like, yeah, it's not good enough. And Microsoft, they eventually just agreed to disagree, I guess. I don't know. So I'm curious, like I haven't, I just got up. I haven't had a chance I saw the headline and read a paragraph, but I want to go look at the actual complaint because I'm curious what it is that Microsoft could do that would meet their needs in this case, right?
Ready for the chat selection bot? Or
this is the
box, not bot, but
the what do you call it? Yeah, I guess the chat, like you said, the chat app ballot or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what they will do. Like, you could speculate till the day is done. I wonder, and this is where it gets real dicey. And Apple could go down this route too, or whatever.
Yeah.
The EU could come back and say, look, because of this, you have already locked all these customers in. Right, right. Like, I can use Stardock as an example. It would take heaven and earth for us to move off of Teams at this point because all that historical data is in there. It's all indexed. We can all search it. So for Stardock to move to Slack or something else would be very difficult. And so I wonder if the EU is like thinking, yeah, you did all that, but that's not what we're mad about. We're mad about all these customers that are now locked in a perpetual agreement and they can't leave.
Well, yeah, lock-in takes many forms, and you just described a really good one of that, or actually two of them technically, because there's just switching costs, and I don't mean dollars necessarily, but like literally, yet now you have a bunch of employees that are like, what is this thing? By the way, if you've ever used Slack, it's like using a different language. Like it's different. Like it's just weird. And my only concern, one of my concerns here is Slack charges a certain price per month, right? Which is whatever. I don't, I do have issues with it, but who cares? Microsoft Office, Microsoft 365, whatever, a certain price per month. I don't see a point, like people always use that, like forcing Coke to put a can of Pepsi in a 6-pack argument. Like it's not that. It's when you reduce the value of Teams compared to Microsoft 365 is not the cost of Slack. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if let's just pretend Slack is $10 a month per user all the time. It's just simple, right? And Microsoft's like, we're going to give you $5 off for not using Teams. You're still paying $5 more a month to use Slack. But that's Slack's business. Like that's like you can't go to Microsoft and say you have to take $10 off. Like that to me seems like a weird solution. Right. It doesn't seem like a solution. Like I don't quite get that. Like Slack, the cost of Slack is arbitrary is not the right word, but it's somewhat arbitrary, right?
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument, and I'm not saying this is the argument that would be made or it's a good argument. But when all this should have occurred, and this would never have happened anyways, is when Teams was actually introduced in the beginning,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Because every
you
company
can't.
went from Skype, pretty much Skype for Business, over to Teams. That was the transition, and there was no real easy way to do that other than just like schlump with the cleaver. And
Brad, I mean, you could go back in time, I don't know, 5 years, 8 years, and say, here are all the apps that Microsoft added to Microsoft 365.
mhm,
Teams took off, like super
yeah,
successful. How could you possibly go to them when it's nothing? They already
no,
have.
I agree.
And by
with
the
you.
way, well, people got to remember this. Like, they already had Skype for Business, right? And before that, Link, and before that, whatever the heck it was called before that, who cares? And Teams is part of this continuum of solutions. It's not like Slack. Well, it is like Slack arrived and Microsoft said we have to copy them, because I guess it's the chat-based aspect of it or something. But Teams is a continuum of a product they've had before Slack existed too. Like, it's they saw Slack as a competitive threat. They're like, we need to address this, and they did. And it's like, well, are you going to come down on them for that? I mean, I don't. So now they're dominant or whatever, or powerful, and you have to retroactively roll that back or fix. I don't know how you fix this.
So here's a theoretical question for the audience or Paul Thurrott, whoever.
Mm-hmm.
So you could make that argument like you just said, right? There's a lot of apps in there. Which one's going to take off? So you could make an argument right now that Loop is in the exact same spot that Teams was.
Yep.
When you look at Notion, should Loop have to be broken out?
Right.
And we all
Loop,
know that if it does, Loop is dead.
yeah. So I would argue there that Microsoft had this thing called OneNote, which they created in 2003 or something. It's over 20 years old, and they are adapting to this new competition. Also, if Loop is successful, if Loop follows through on its promise, it will replace Microsoft Word. It will replace other ways that we share information, like that today are happening in Excel documents or PowerPoint presentations, whatever. Well, I mean, they've had those products for decades and decades. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough thing. Well, it's hard to understand, but I guess fundamentally the rules change when you are a monopolist, right? So I guess that's the world. I don't know I don't know. There's no easy answer here. There's no doubt Microsoft, like, look, competitively, they're like, we have this advantage. We have this suite. We have this service, Microsoft 365. It's way more than Slack. We'll throw it in there, and that's how we're going to push it forward. That's how they did things with Internet Explorer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that is so similar, which I think and this is Europe versus US, so it's a little different, but during the antitrust trial Microsoft had in the US over basically bundling IE, AOL bought Netscape. And that really threw a wrench into things, because they're like, you said you were going out of business because of this, but you were so valuable, this other company bought you. And that's what happened with Slack. And Slack was in much better shape, and it still is, compared to its competitor than Netscape was compared to Microsoft. So apparently you guys were so valuable that Salesforce saw the potential there. And they're a much bigger company that can compete better with Microsoft than like a little company like Slack, right? So there's a lot of little variables. It's not. It's nuanced. I don't know how else to say it.